Hi guys, this is Omar speaking. Welcome to Level 0, and I'm here to share some ideas on how to design cars. So, in this section, I'm going to talk about the introduction to foundations. This is the very beginning. Like, basically, this tutorial is designed to have a basic idea how to start a car from scratch. So, the reason I have created this foundational content is to help anybody around the world that is interested on learning how to design cars from scratch, how to begin from level 0. So you don't have to have any previous knowledge to begin. So I understand that designing an automobile, it can be a very complex matter, and it is fair to say that for some people, not knowing anything about the subject, it can cause many frustrations. So that's why we're gonna start in a very simple way. So as you guys can see right now, I'm starting just with a box. The whole point is to start with the box and start simplifying the anatomy of the car. So, in a nutshell, the way I would describe a car is mainly composed by a cabin, body, and wheels. That's it, nothing else. And I would concentrate in the primitive shapes. So, my first step, as you guys can see, it was just to make the brick, the prisma, right? Just to get the right proportions of it. And the second step is just to put another box on top, which is going to represent the cabin. The interesting thing about the construction of the cabin is that we're gonna leave some gaps in between. For example, on the sides, you see that I left two gaps, and as well as the front and rear. And the purpose of this is because these gaps are going to represent the next part of the car. For example, the sides are going to represent the shoulder of the car. And the shoulder usually gives a lot of volume and a lot of musculature to the whole body of the car. And the rear gap is going to represent the trunk, and obviously the front gap is going to represent the hood. So leaving these gaps is very important so you can understand the whole anatomy, and later on those gaps are going to be really useful for the construction of the car. The next thing we're going to do is the body sides. And the way we're going to represent the body sides is by drawing a section of a cylinder. And this section has to be clean, and it'll help us to make the whole body of the car a little bit more round. So the same is going to happen in the front. As you guys can see, I'm putting another section of a cylinder at the front, and this is going to help us to have a very round section at the front of the car, and it's going to be well connected to the hood. One piece of advice in general is just to keep the geometries very simple. Don't overcomplicate things. That's why I'm not talking about proportions. I'm not talking about any design in a specific. This is just pure geometry. And just keep it simple until you master. The next thing we're going to work on is the wheels. And the way we're going to build the wheels is first, we need to place the axles, right? And then we're gonna make a perpendicular line, 90 degree, that is gonna dictate the orientation of our cylinders or of the circles, who at the end of the day are gonna represent the wheels. So the construction of a circle or a cylinder in perspective, it requires a little bit more explanation. So I'm gonna have obviously more sections in the future where I'm gonna explain in detail, because it can take a whole video just to talk about that. So For the sake of simplicity for this section, we're just gonna try to make a well-oriented circles, and we're gonna place our wheels just to not get distracted with many input of knowledge. So as I said it before, this is just the very foundational, it's very basic, and I want you guys just to practice the simplified version of how to make a car. So as you can see, these whole geometries together are gonna give us the right clue of how the car would look like proportionally. So these later on are gonna help us to elaborate our templates. Just take it as a this is gonna be your guidelines to put your designs on top. And I really recommend to practice this technique or this construction method over and over again until you get used to it. And then you can start rotating the perspectives, different angles, and you can start elaborating your own perspectives. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start putting some more clues of construction, and in this case we're gonna put other sections of a cylinders in order to represent the cabin of the car. Later on we can get more advanced and we can start putting sections, color, line quality, design, etc. But for now, let's just stay to the basics, the very building blocks. In the next sections, of course, I'm going to start talking about proportions and design aspects, and we can get a little bit more detail on how to create a original car, how to create a original design. But for now, let's just stay with the basics. The next thing we're gonna do now is just to put a little bit more detail, let's say on the windows. Um, I would say before it was sort of like the construction of the rest of the cabin, but now in this purple section you can see is literally the windows of the car. And basically this will give us all the information that we need. And I think the next step is just to start creating some sections. The sections are gonna help us to understand how the surface behave and what is the right geometry that we're building. Also, drawing sections on the car is the very right method on how to communicate visually the shape of a car or the shape of any geometry. In general, sections are very useful, and doing them over and over again will give you a better understanding on how to draw in 3D or how to manage or arrange geometries. And it's exactly what we need when it comes to create not only cars, but any product that you want to develop. The next thing we're gonna do is just to grab what we've done with the geometries and try to make a copy. Why? Because the way we're going to create a silhouette or a template of a car is by having the foundations underneath, which is the body, cabin, and wheels. So the next step is a little bit more simpler, and we are only going to make a selection in order to cut a clean shape of the template that we built, and we're gonna make a copy of it. The other one we're gonna make it a little bit little bit smaller, and just to have the reference with us. One way to verify if our geometry is correct is by flipping the whole image horizontally, and then you can start seeing some flaws in the design if there are some. That's the reason every time you draw a car, it doesn't matter what perspective, what angle, the thing that you should be doing very often is to flip it over and over again until you find out if what you are drawing is correct. So this is basically our template, and we're gonna make the silhouette right now. And the way we're gonna make it is just by following the perimeter of the whole car. At this point, don't try to make anything fancy, don't try to complicate the shape, just literally go line by line and just draw the whole section. And the thing I'm pointing out right now is the important aspect of a car. It's almost like a muscle. It's like you need that shape over there in order to make sense of it. And as I said at the beginning, this shape is the shoulder of the car. That's why in the beginning we left that gap between the box, because that gap is gonna give us a clue. And we're gonna start just finishing the whole silhouette. As I said, just follow the perimeter and make the entire silhouette of the car. So, and it's very important, guys, don't forget that each bump, each surface, anything that you see on a car, and especially on a car design sketch, each bump is there for a reason. There's a reason why things are built in a certain way. It's the same for human anatomy, or imagine your face. You have your nose, you have your two eyes, two ears, mouth, chin. You have all the facial features. And just think about it. If one of those facial features is a little bit off or a little bit moved, anyone will notice. So, and this is the how critical and but at the same time how well designed things are. So, and something very similar happened with cars. That's why sometimes it's a little bit harder, it's a little bit tricky than other products, is because it has many construction and many gestural points, and proportions are also very critical. So that's why my objective is just to create a simple silhouette, and by following the geometry that we built, and you can have a great idea of how usually a car looks like, right? And this is just one angle. You can create later on another angle, another type of view. You can transform the proportions. You can make the hood longer. Maybe the cabin is gonna be taller. The body is gonna be slimmer. You can play around after that. This is basically the building blocks, and you understand the composition, you understand the geometries, and then you can make your own later on. Next, what we are going to do is just to draw on top of our template, and we need to just to draw the necessary lines to show our geometries. This is not about redrawing the whole template. This is just about to create the right composition, just to draw whatever lines we need to show that we are constructing a car. In this case, we're talking about the cabin, some of the windows, and probably we're gonna go for the wheels and the rest of the car. But as you can see, the lines are very minimal because this is just to help us to have an idea, to get familiar with the proportions, to get familiar with the construction of the car. At this point, I would say the process is a little bit more fun because if you think about it, the whole template is there already. The car is already there. We don't need to think about the orientation of the wheels. We don't need to think about proportions of the hood. Whatever we did in our initial geometry is what is going to dictate the whole looking of the car. And again, this is a very useful exercise where you can learn basic proportions, basic construction of a car. And even if you're a beginner, just by having simple knowledge about boxes, cylinders, you're going to be able to create a car. And I consider this is one of the simplest ways to do it without getting into much details and much of a, let's say, complications when you're designing a car. That's why no proportions, no design, no brands, nothing, just boxy car. And later on, put your designs on top. Just have fun. If you want to put some different surfaces on the body sides, go ahead. Or any type of front that you wish to do, yeah, just you can do it. But just please begin with a simple construction. What I'm doing right now is just to put a little bit of shading, and this is just for a simple representation of the body side or section of a cylinder. And I'm gonna put some logos, some headlamps. I would suggest the headlamps do it very simple. Don't create a very complicated shape. In this case, I just put a circle or a cylinder. Maybe you can create your own version. Maybe it can be a square. Maybe it can be just a line, a dot. You choose, but don't overcomplicate things. I would say this is just the beginning, just for you to get used to how to draw cars and make your designs, but do something simple. The most important thing is for you to practice and to get used to these type of architectures. And I promise you that with practice, you're gonna get very good at this. And later on, you're gonna create amazing designs. For the most part, this is it. This is how you build cars. And what I'm doing right now is just putting a little bit more details, shading, but really what mattered the most of this section is to create the right geometry and templates. I would also want to mention, guys, if you have any suggestions, any questions, or any type of material that you want to see in the future, please feel free to ask. Feel free to reach me out in my socials or go to the website or write me an email. And I would happily consider any of your suggestions to create new content. Because at the end of the day, my objective is just to fill all the gaps that you guys might have when it comes to learning car design. So any type of question, any curiosity, like I will be happy to make new content and help you guys out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is just the introduction to foundations. I know there's many topics that we need to talk about, and the objective is for you to get to sketch cars with no problem and later on create great designs. So, all right, that's it for this topic, and I'll see you guys in the next section.